So we have about a half hour of time left, so we want to go ahead and give you a little information on chapters 4 and 5, and just a brief sneak peek of the IRM and the E. So we're going to keep moving now. Is that good? So I'm just going to start chapter 4 by saying this is recommendations for everyone. So who is everyone?
Everyone.
Right, and how many jumps could somebody have as part of that?
None.
Zero.
None.
26 as a new A license holder or less, right? It could be a student looking into this chapter, all the way up to God knows how many. So we wrote this to cover everyone. So some of the recommendations may not be exactly what you would do as the 20,000 jump person, but we had to write these for the lowest common denominator. So keep that in mind as you read through the chapter.
We're not going to go through and spend as much time in chapter 4 as we did in the ISP. The changes there are not as significant, other than the way that it's written, but we do have a few things. We have a QR code for the downsizing best practices card. If you wanted that QR code, Sherry promised it earlier, it's right there. And I'll give you a second to go ahead and do that. We did update a handful of things. Obviously, we updated some of the terminology, just like we did in the ISP. Our hope is that the culture will change and we'll all be using the same terminology again. We changed out a few other things. For 2 out, we recommend that you land both parachutes unless you have downplane. We changed the canopy flight emergency procedures are added. We discussed canopies during an emergency. We expanded the section on currency training in particular. There's a lot of expanded information, but currency and doing a currency jump is quite expanded. We made clear guidance on what you should do when doing that currency information. Before it was, here's the things you should cover, but it didn't necessarily tell you what you should do. Now we have both of those. We have, a discussion of a MARD and an RSL. We learned in our discussions with each other that not everybody understands how an RSL and MARD works, particularly the MARD. And so in chapter 4 now, you can find a discussion of how a MARD works. Improved discussion of AADs and altimeters and the errors that they may have. We really wanted to focus on a culture of safety. And so in chapter 4, we started discussing the culture of safety and the responsibility everyone has for creating that culture. We recommend mutual gear checks for all skydivers of all experience. And we have a more robust weather discussion. And coming from Colorado, my favorite part is that it now includes density altitude, because that matters a lot in my world. We also added space here, hoping to continue that as part of the cultural shift. Better explanation of jump run separation, flight plan considerations for different disciplines, and we have a division on incident reports, which I'd like to remind you anyone can fill out, whether it's a fatality. The more information we have, the better information we can do when we do things like this. Several times this committee said, what's the data say? And our data is limited if we don't have incident reports. My other favorite change to chapter 4 is that we changed the decision altitude recommendations. It has been 1,800 for higher licensed jumpers for a long time. We bumped that up to 2,000. Canopies aren't the same as they were 25 years ago, and a little more time never hurt anyone. It's also an easier round number to see. And for D license holders, it's now at your discretion based on your experience and your equipment. We found most D license holders bump theirs back up to student altitudes in. Any questions about chapter 4? Sure. Talk about chapter 5.
Right, and chapter 5 is the discipline-specific recommendations. We had a lot of input from like almost every section was sent out to a subject matter expert in that discipline, that it was either at least reviewed for content and relevance, and then, or completely rewritten. The section 5-3 is night jumps, and we have a committee that's currently working on suggested future updates, so you'll see changes probably in 2026 for that. Canopy formations are much more robust. And that section, that entire section was reviewed by Jim Cowan, who's obviously an expert in that field. We moved from we moved logging and free fall time from chapter 5 to chapter 3. We combined the canopy sections, the two sections that we used to have for canopy and the B license course recommendations into one section and just completely reorganized that. The high altitude section, which is now chapter 5-6, was completely rewritten by the, wrong order here. Completely rewritten by the High Altitude Task Force in conjunction with PIA. And the important thing to know about this section is that USPA is not providing recommendations for skydiving above 18,000 feet MSL, since that's outside of sport parachuting altitudes, and just gives the recommendation of that you should go get additional training and information if you're working on jumps higher than that altitude. We reframed the wingsuit section to match other sections, because in the old sim, it was just about a wingsuit first jump course. And so now it is important for every wingsuiter to go in and read this, because it has all of the relevant information that all of the other categories have for this discipline. Let's see. And then camera flying is a much more robust section regarding mounts and emergencies. And I want to remind everybody that you should share this information, especially with younger jumpers who are thinking about putting a camera on their head, that USPA offers an online course for camera flying at the USPA library on the website. And if you haven't watched that yourself as a coach or an instructor, an examiner, you should get on there and do that, because there's a lot of good tips and basic teaching about it.
Guys, for the camera modules, they are $4.99. If you have an instructor rating, email me. I'm happy to give it to you for free, so that you know what tools are available for your students.
Okay, chapter 6 is the prorated section, and it's been rewritten to be a narrative form. And there were some questions before, this is that passive voice thing that Jen talked about, that led to some discrepancies. In particular, there were a lot of places in the sim that were like this. In particular, in the pro section, you'd find people arguing about, does it mean this or does it mean this? And it was very ambiguous. And so we clarified the initial rating requirements and the rating renewal requirements, and by putting it in that active voice and narrative language, hopefully that will eliminate some of the debate about what the intention was. And then in the glossary, we removed updated terms. One of the terms we removed is a Mae West. I don't think anyone's called spinning canopy Mae West in over 20 years, just to give you an example of one of the terms that we removed. And then we added a few that have become part of our vernacular. And so that was the major change to chapter 6. And then